I've written a series of discussion questions and they appear in the back of the book. The reason I've done that is because I'm in a book group myself, a book club myself, and I know that when you've got a book like that, it's great to have questions that you can concentrate on and perhaps talk over with other people who have read the book as well. So you'll find them in the back of the book. They're a discussion of the various issues that I hope the book will raise. I know that people will come to different conclusions about different characters. I've been quite surprised myself about the conclusions that some people have come to about the book. But I think the reader brings a lot to the text, and the reader will decide in the end which characters they like, which they don't, which they understand, and which they'd like to know more about. One of the interesting questions I think that comes out of the book is who bears responsibility for the death of the small boy. It's something that I haven't exactly come to a conclusion about myself. Some people will say that the mother was responsible for his death, and other people will say that no, in fact, the little girl had something to do with it too. But I think we have to look even more broadly than that. There are some families in the community who are so strained and need so much more help from the rest of us as a community, and I think in some ways we all take responsibility for what happens in those families. One of the things that's troubled me as a reporter is what happens to the other children in a family where there has been a trauma and perhaps the mother or both the parents have gone to prison. It seems that there is an idea that they go into the community and get cared for by foster carers, and then we assume that everything is all right into the future. But I think, having worked as a reporter, I know that often they get separated from their siblings, they end up living in different homes, they get bounced around the foster care system, and often they end up just living in caravans and motels, and in the end sometimes even on the street. And I guess one of the things I wanted to explore in this book is what responsibility we as a community have for children who are left in that circumstance once we've prosecuted their parents. One of the first things that Lauren does after she reaches adulthood, or the age of 17 or 18, is move away from the state of Victoria to New South Wales, where she sets herself up in a little granny flat out the back of somebody else's house. It seemed to me that this would be a natural thing for a young woman to do. She had no family of any kind anymore in Melbourne, and I think that she wanted to escape from the circumstances of her childhood and create a whole new identity for herself. But as it says on the front of the book, the past is always close behind. Lauren has a lot of unsatisfactory sexual encounters with young men when she's still an adolescent or a teenager, and I think looking for affection or looking for some belonging in her life. As an adult, her first relationship is with a man who is married, and I struggled over that. In fact, in the first draft of the book, she didn't know he was married. I couldn't quite bring myself to have her have a relationship with a man that she knew was married, in case people started to see her as no more than a homewrecker. But in retrospect, I realised that her first relationship would be with a married man because that is much safer. She didn't want to have to open herself up to a proper relationship with another adult who might judge her and what had happened in her childhood. I think the adult relationship between Lauren and her brother Harley is very interesting. They weren't raised together, so in some ways when they come together as adults they're strangers, although very close in age, and they clearly share the same mother. It seemed to me that the second that Harley had an opportunity to hook up with his sister, his biological sister, he would take that opportunity. But I'm not 100% sure that he knew exactly what he was getting himself into, because his childhood had been quite stable. Once he was taken into a foster home, he was raised with a great deal of care and a great deal of love, whereas Lauren had a much more troubled time. And I think that when they came together, he perhaps didn't anticipate the problems that would be there when the two of them tried to relate to each other as siblings, as opposed to just strangers meeting for the first time. I think the book raises a lot of questions about what happens to children who have been in a family where there has been some trauma. And I wanted to create one character who really clearly showed how it can sometimes be impossible to get over that kind of trauma. And that character is obviously Hayley Cashman. She's had a terrible time growing up, and now she's a single mum. She's very young. She has a young daughter, and she's at war with Lauren, with Harley, with all of her all of the foster parents who tried to raise her. And I think that's a really real scenario for a lot of children who come out of foster care completely unconnected to anybody in the world and with no real idea how to make their way in the world as an adult.